You know what's strange? Sometimes, when people finally get everything the world told them would make them happy, that's when they start to feel the emptiest. She had diamonds on her fingers, designer bags in her closet, and chandeliers lighting up her life. But every night, when the world fell silent, her heart whispered a truth only she could hear. This is not happiness. In today's story, I want to take you inside the life of someone who had everything, except the one thing that truly mattered, herself. Her name was Isabella. She wasn't born rich. She wasn't born extraordinary. But she was born with dreams, soft dreams, like wanting to be loved, wanting to matter, and wanting a life that felt real. She fell in love once with someone simple, someone honest, someone who wrote her poetry instead of buying her roses, someone who looked at her like she was enough, even when she wore no makeup, no jewelry, no perfection. But he wasn't rich. He couldn't offer her the lifestyle she secretly dreamed of. Then she met someone else, a man who didn't write poems. He bought islands. He didn't hold her hand. He bought her diamonds. He didn't understand her heart, but he could buy anything that made it quiet. And so, one afternoon, under the glow of a golden chandelier, wearing a dress stitched with crystals and surrounded by luxury, Isabella made a choice that changed everything. She said yes to comfort. She said yes to status. She said yes to wealth. But in doing so, she silently said no to herself. At first it felt magical. Luxury cars, trips to Paris, silk gowns, red carpets. The world saw her as the luckiest woman alive. But what the world couldn't see was that she was slowly disappearing. Not physically, but emotionally. There were no more poems, no more real laughter, no more conversations that mattered. Just parties filled with strangers, photos filled with fake smiles, and days filled with the kind of loneliness that no luxury could hide. She had the kind of sadness that didn't cry, it glittered. She lived in a palace yet felt homeless in her own heart. One night at a grand event, surrounded by glamorous people, somebody asked her a simple question: "Are you happy?" She smiled for the cameras, but inside her soul whispered, "I don't remember what happiness feels like." That night she looked into the mirror, not to fix her makeup, but to find herself. She asked the reflection, "When did I lose you?" That's when truth hit her harder than reality ever had. She didn't lose herself in one big moment. She lost herself slowly. Every time she chose validation over love, appearance over authenticity, comfort over connection. She didn't marry a man. She married a lifestyle and divorced herself. And that, my friends, is the emotional price of luxury. Luxury isn't wrong. Wealth isn't bad. But when you trade your identity for it, you don't own it. It owns you. Because in the end, a diamond ring cannot hold your hand at 2 a.m. when your soul feels tired. A mansion cannot make you feel at home if your heart feels empty. A perfect life means nothing if it wasn't built with love, truth, and your true self. So, before you chase luxury, ask yourself, do I want a beautiful life, or do I just want it to look beautiful? Isabella eventually found the answer, but not in the palace, not at the parties, not in the diamonds. She found it quietly, in a moment of absolute honesty. When she finally remembered who she truly was before the world told her who she should be. And that was the moment she became rich again. Not in money, not in status, but in something far more rare: self-worth. They say sometimes life doesn't break you, it simply whispers to you. Then if you don't listen, it raises its voice. And if you still ignore it, it tears you apart just to show you what you've been avoiding. For Isabella, that moment came quietly. It wasn't a dramatic divorce, it wasn't a scandal, it wasn't even a fight. It was a simple morning, birds singing outside her window, sunlight spilling across marble floors. Everything looked beautiful. Yet nothing felt beautiful. She sat at a table made of glass and gold, eating breakfast that someone else had prepared, in a house someone else had designed, living a life someone else had chosen. And that morning she realized she had become a guest in her own life. Her husband walked in, kissed her on the forehead, said he would be gone for another business trip. She nodded quietly, like she always did. But this time, something in her heart responded differently. That day, she found herself walking into a tiny coffee shop she hadn't visited in years. The same shop she used to go to before her wedding, when life was simple, when she still wrote dreams in her notebook instead of pretending she was living them. The man behind the counter recognized her, not as the rich wife, not as the elegant lady from magazines, but as Isabella, the girl who once sat there after her music classes, sipping coffee and telling him about the songs she wanted to write. "Do you still write music?" he asked. She froze. Music? She hadn't touched a piano in 3 years. She didn't even remember when she stopped. She paused, eyes blinking slowly, and said something she hadn't said in a long time. "I don't know who I am anymore." And that was the beginning of her return. Not a return to her past, but a return to herself. She went home, not to pack her bags, not to run away, not to fight, but to begin. She opened the door to a room she hadn't visited in years. A small music studio covered in dust, forgotten like an abandoned dream. She sat at the piano. She placed her fingers on the keys. And for the first time in years, something inside her felt alive. She didn't play perfectly. In fact, she stumbled, she struggled. But what she felt was real. That day, she didn't play music. She remembered herself. She spent hours there. Didn't post a picture. Didn't record a video. Didn't tell anyone. It was just her music, and her truth. Days became weeks. She wasn't leaving her marriage. She was simply returning to her identity. She started waking up before the world demanded anything from her. She wrote poems again. She painted. She played. She laughed, sometimes without reason. She began showing up in places not because she looked perfect, but because she felt something again. And slowly her husband noticed. One evening, as she sat playing a soft melody, he stood by the door quietly watching. He didn't recognize the music, but he recognized something else. He recognized her. The woman he fell in love with. Not the perfect wife, not the elegant hostess, not the public image, but the real her. The one he hadn't seen in years. He walked toward her slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile but sacred. He looked at her for a long time, then said 7 simple words. "I've missed you, even when you were here." Silence hung in the air, heavy, emotional, real. She looked at him, teary-eyed, and replied, "I've missed me too." And that was the moment healing began, not because life suddenly became perfect, but because authenticity returned. She still lived in a mansion. She still had diamonds. She still sat under golden chandeliers. But now she knew luxury was beautiful, but truth was priceless. She wasn't lost anymore, not because she changed her life, but because she returned to it, her real life, a life where she didn't need applause to feel seen, didn't need diamonds to feel valuable, didn't need perfection to feel worthy. She finally understood. The greatest luxury is not wealth, it is self-belonging. So, if the world ever makes you feel like you're not enough unless you're perfect, rich, praised, admired, remember her story. You don't need to be special. You just need to be yourself. The world may love your image, but your soul only loves your truth. Some people spend their whole lives trying to become someone significant in the world's eyes. But the real blessing is becoming someone significant in your own eyes. That is where real elegance begins. Not in diamonds, but in authenticity. If you felt this, it's because this story wasn't just about her. It was about anyone who ever abandoned themselves while trying to be loved. And somewhere deep down, we all know, to lose everything and still have yourself is the greatest wealth.